Might have forgot about us.
Welcome to We Are the Perkins. I am Misha,
And I'm Rob.
and
We are the Perkins.
we just wanted to first start off with some introductions. We realized that normally when we start our videos, we may not give enough
Yeah,
detail.
we just assume that you guys know who we are.
Yes, but that's mostly for the people who we know.
What's up, Steven?
But we noticed that we have a lot of viewers who are
Stephon.
viewing that we don't know. Hey, Stephon. Hey.
Hey, everybody.
Mother
Hey,
Ray.
hey, Mother
It's
Ray.
a couple people I missed. But say hello so I can say hello back. If you've not been with us before, we are a young couple.
Young Christian couple.
Young Christian couple, yes.
And
we got married 13 years ago.
13 years. We just celebrated 13 years.
Yes.
And
so we were really young, about 18 and 20.
19 and 21.
Yep.
19 and 21.
We were together.
The major thing is we wish we had an outlet. And I know it's a lot of outlets now that you can go and get some good, wholesome advice.
Yes.
But we want to help some couples that may not have those outlets.
Right. And when we were starting out, we really didn't have anybody to give us any insight. It was kind of like,
trial and
get
error.
married and, it'll work itself out.
The funny thing is that we're the tail end of, the beginning of the millennials.
Yeah.
So we think a lot like Generation X,
Right.
So some of our views, some of our morals seem very old school to some people,
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess we get the best of both worlds, and we get to talk about some of the morals that help us to make some decisions that we've made.
Yeah.
And we can share some of the good times and some of the bad times. If you have questions, this month has been all about relationships. So we're going to be talking about some of the, the ups and the downs, anything that we've learned, and I've learned a lot.
Right.
Over the last 13 years, so if you have questions, you can put them in the comment sections, and we'll try to answer them as we see them.
Yes.
All right.
And so we thank you guys so much for watching. If you've not been with us before, we just want to say hello. And hey, Lachey, hey, Dalvin. We kind of talked to a couple people as they're coming in the beginning. So we just wanted to welcome you guys here. And tonight we will be talking about
priorities.
Because
they always change.
They do.
They change. For the most part, you have a set table of priorities. One being if you're religious, you believe that God is the head of your life, and you believe that He sets a path for you, and then He places people in your path.
Right.
And then you go family and so forth, career and so on. So
we
want to talk about priorities because they tend to change, especially when different people are added into the picture, having kids. So now you're wearing the mom hat as well as the wife hat, or you're doing a career. So dad comes home and he's supervisor at home, or he's, something else at work, but then he come home and he has to be the breadwinner.
Right.
So we're going to talk about those priorities and how they affect the relationships that we have in our family life.
Right.
Right?
Yep. And so I noticed that sometimes as a mom, you can get caught up in the notion that you have to do parent things first, and then sometimes like your wifely duties will take the back burner. And so you have to really address those things, especially if your spouse says something about it, or you realize that sometimes you get caught up in your day-to-day activity. The same principle, if you were working and you maybe work from home, you might be doing a lot more work than you are doing other things or spending time with your spouse.
Right.
And so there can be times where those gray areas can take over the time that you should be spending with your spouse. And also defining those times where, say, some people call them date night. So you'll have a date night and implement that so that you make sure that you're still giving the time you need to your spouse or to your significant other.
Right.
And also talking those things through. If you're not married, how you'll work those out.
Right. Well, we've talked about it for the last few weeks, but communication is key. Communication, making sure that you guys are on the same page, making sure that everything is kind of spelled out. we get away from making assumptions because when you assume, you know what happens.
Yes. Out of me and you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't want to make those assumptions. We want to make sure that we are clearly spelling things out. Now, having 3 kids and having 3 different sets of needs, we understand that, hey, the younger kid needs more attention.
Right.
So even in the marriage, sometimes you feel like the children need more attention than the spouse, but sometimes the spouse is like, wait a minute.
Right.
Wait a minute.
Where do I fit in? Where do I fit in?
Yep.
And so you can get caught up in that. And so let us know if you have something that maybe takes up majority of your time, or if you have any questions about how to address certain situations and to fit things in. You know, sometimes that can get blurry. So
right.
Let us know in the comment section. And let us know also things that maybe you've heard. It doesn't have to necessarily be your relationship, but things that you've heard people going through and how their priorities may be out of whack.
Right.
And so whenever you do get to that point where you realize, hey, what you're doing at this time doesn't really work for me. Can we start doing this? Like,
right.
How do you start to have those kind of conversations, or when is it important to start talking about it?
It's always important to, like I said, keep communication first. I think a major thing that we have to realize, and I think I've used this scripture before, but a false balance is an abomination, right?
Right.
Right. So if you are trying to make something look balanced, but everything else is kind of going out of whack,
right,
then that's abomination from God, and you really need to seek help on how to actually get a true balance.
Right.
Because God wants you to enjoy life, but He wants you to enjoy relationships.
Right.
Exactly. And the people that are in your lives. So I think the major thing is making sure that we achieve a true balance.
Right.
With at home,
yes,
business, work, or whatever we're doing. Make sure we're just having fun doing it.
Exactly. Yes. Somebody said I agree 100%. Communication is key.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. And what it was on yours then?
School, but it has gotten better. That's
yes,
good.
Yes, school can definitely
right.
take up a lot of time.
Right.
At some point in our marriage, I was in school, and the homework, and then the kids, and just so many things, just so many balls to juggle. You kind of get like, listen, I can't do that right now because I got to get this paper in by such and such time.
Right.
Well, if that's the case, then maybe I have to give up a little bit of my sleep time. Like, it's a hard place to find yourself in, but we've been there where he feels neglected. And because as females, that's really not, well, some females, okay, I can say not all females, some females, that's not really priority for us. It's just not that we try to do it intentionally, but because you have kids like mom, and then it can be awkward because the kids are around. Sorry. And so it could be like, it can be, gray areas. And so you definitely have to start talking about that because we had to. Like, we had to talk about it in order for us to, revamp and figure out what works best for us, or how I can juggle, all the other stuff that I had to do.
Yeah. So those gray areas.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about those.
Now, when you say you feel neglected, sometimes I notice, because priority is a very important thing to any relationship.
Right.
If you love someone, you tend to observe how they respond. Whether it's a birthday, you say, hey, what should I give her? What should I give him?
Right.
Because I want them to be happy. I want them to be at their highest place of joy. I want to make them tick. So, you look at those kind of things, especially with a mate, and you want the same thing in return. So you're going to get to a place where, hey, she should see, or they should see, or she should notice me. It's been plenty of times when I've seen my wife get dressed up because she wanted my attention.
Right.
She wanted me to make that comment or to compliment her.
Right.
And she made sure that she put the time in. Anytime that the woman has to ask, did you notice something different about me?
Right.
You're in trouble, buddy. you get into a place where that it should be automatic. And I think not just the female likes the compliments, but the male likes the compliments. Because imagine this. You can go out to the grocery store. you go to the mall and somebody that admires what they see can stop you and make every attempt to gain your attention at least, to have a conversation. If nothing else, have a conversation. Why can't you get that attention at home?
Right.
Why can't you get that conversation at home?
Right. And that's another thing that you definitely want to make sure you that you like keep up. Like you have to make sure that you keep constant communication with your wife, because you can see, like I know for us, because we not us in general, but women, we are visual beings just as much as men. Men majority get the time of they're more visual than us, but we're visual as well. And so for people in general, the women normally do a lot more to make ourselves look great and to try to be the best that we can be. But then sometimes guys will slow down, like know what I mean? Like they'll slow down on everything. Like
you mean to tell me we got to get haircuts?
You know what I mean? You got to get haircuts, a little manscape. You know, you got to just keep your facial hair under control. You know, that kind of thing. Now I don't have that problem. My husband, you know, he does it without me having to say anything about it. Praise God. But some men, you know, they want you to do all the work to look great, and then they just drink juice and sit on the couch and just gain weight and just do, you know, whatever. And so we have to make sure that when we notice that somebody is doing something to be attractive, or you want to make sure that you notice those things.
Okay, so I seen a video circulating probably about a month ago where you know where I'm going with this. So where the wife had, you know, given up, and the guy had wrote into a radio station or whatever, and he said, "Hey man, I try to get her into a program. I promised to work out with her and whatever, but nothing seemed to work. She just let, in his words, let herself go."
Right.
So, you know, let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, hold on. Let's see what they had to say just before we get there.
Very true. You should be giving, in the compliments at home first. Yep.
Yes, you should be getting the compliments at home first.
It's a rule of thumb. And it's gotten so, I guess, regular that I find myself doing it with my daughter almost every morning, saying, "Hey, you're beautiful." And, you know, she has to get it there first, so when she gets out in the world, she's not impressed by any little taglines and people trying to holler and you know, people shooting their shot.
Exactly.
Look, if you shoot your shot, I'm gonna shoot my shot. Young man. Young man. I know she's 5 right now, but let me go ahead and put that disclaimer out there.
Exactly. And so, go ahead. For the people who just came in, just a small snippet of what your question was before we got to that question.
So the question is, now, my wife says that compliments are very important. The visual aspect of it is very important, like keeping yourself out, keeping yourself up. So, you know, you are the glory to a man, essentially. And so the women said, well, there's another side, because, you know, we want something to look at too.
Exactly. We do want something to look at too. So if you are one of those people who want your wife to look great, then why don't you start by looking great and, you know, go from there. But while we're talking about it, you know, you want to make sure that you don't get caught up in that, though. Like, as people, like, if I'm at home and it's just a chill day, I should not have to put on makeup every day. Like, we want to get rid of that stigma, because some people's testimony is that they get up in the morning and they're like, I woke up like this, and they don't let their husband see them undone, and they don't let out bodily things in front of their spouses and things like that. So there are different dynamics. So you have to figure out what works for you guys.
And that goes back to that false balance. When you have to try so hard to maintain an image that is actually hurting you, it's making you feel stressed out, then you should probably let it go. Like, you got to get to a place where, you know, you love yourself first. And I think for the man, because you say the men have to do some of the things, well, sometimes it's our confidence. Like, we don't have to do as much, because we you know, beer belly and all. We have like, hey girl, what you know now? Jerome in the house. Shut your mouth.
Watch your mouth.
Watch your mouth. Yeah. So
with 1 2. Trying to holler at you in the grocery store. It's the word. But yet, you know, it's funny because on
Confidence
days,
will take you a long way.
listen, it will. On days where I might not be having a great day, I just kind of like throw on some sweats and like my hair's in a bun and maybe I'll put a hat on or something. It's funny because those are the days where most people, like I get more people trying to holler at me. Like guys are like, hey, you know, how you doing, sweetheart? Stuff like that. But if I come into the store and I have on makeup and like my hair's done and all that stuff, majority of the time people won't say anything.
Because you look like you out of their league.
Well, maybe that's
you
it.
You look like you important. You
well,
look like you special.
Maybe that's it. So do you guys have that? Like, do you get more people that want to talk to you when you look your worst, or you feel like you look your worst, or when you get dressed up? That's a good poll for us to have. So
right.
Go ahead and
when
put best
regular.
or when you
hey,
look
go ahead
regular.
And share. Go ahead and share while you
yes.
while you typing. Share.
Exactly. Go ahead and share.
Let's share. Let's get some people. Miss Miles, thank you for coming on.
Hey
Dorothy,
guys, I saw so many people that came
Alan,
in that I didn't
up?
catch. Hey Betty Joe, I saw Coco, and it's a couple people that came in. Thank you guys so much for watching.
I see the hearts. Thank you.
If you are just joining with us, we are talking about priorities. And so that is a big deal in relationships in general.
Right.
Just kind of clarifying where people fall or where different life things fall, whether it's work or school or your job or what have you. But, you know.
Or marriage in general. Like I've noticed lately that the millennials are taking a longer time to get married.
Yeah, they're just deciding.
They're like, hey, I'm taking my time, and I don't even know if this is necessary.
That's true.
You know, and they're doing they're playing house.
Right.
And, you know, so let's talk about it. Priorities. Is that a priority?
Is marriage a priority?
Betty Joe.
Yes, is marriage a priority?
She said, yep, compliments on her hair. My screen is a little bit. Oh, yep. Compliments on your hair and everything. So yeah, on regular days, you know, you go out there. I think when you're out there and you are just living life, that's what really makes a person attractive. Like their confidence level, you know, they out there. I've seen women like shave their heads and they just walk with a different confidence.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And to me, it takes confidence because that's a stigma that your hair is your glory. Right. I mean, it's even in a biblical principle that a woman's hair is her glory. So, I mean, that's almost like a defiant elegance that has to come with, or a defiant confidence that has to come with doing something so bold.
Right.
So what do you think?
I think that it's definitely a bold move. I think that it's great that women are finding their peace or their joy in loving themselves. I think that's perfect. I think it's beautiful. And if you want to do that, hey, just, you know, if you do it, don't do it and be, you know, shy and leery. I guess once you do it, you kind of just have no choice but to be like, I'm cute.
There's no coming back tomorrow for that. You know?
But it's okay. You know? It's okay. But you had said something else. It was another comment you had made before we had gotten here.
About the marriage?
Yes, about the marriage, about young millennials, or even there's some older people who just decide, you know, to wait a little while to get married. And you said also that people are deciding to kind of like coexist. And what do you guys think? Do you think that marriage is a priority right now, or do you feel like the priority is more geared upon careers or building what you want your life to be, and then adding the husband in later or the wife in later?
Yeah,
so that's a good one for you guys to get in and let us know what you think.
I have a thought about it too. I have a thought about it. My thought is that, you know, the previous generation, they were pushed to kind of get married first and earlier before they really decided what they wanted to do. And there was a lot of divorce that resulted in those kind of arranged marriages. So I think now people are going towards their careers more, and if they find someone good, but if not, they're going to be successful and they're going to enjoy life and they're really going to do what they want to do.
Right.
Now, you know, you can get caught up in that lifestyle.
You can.
And that's really not the design that God has for you. And that's, from a Christian perspective, as a pastor,
now,
I have to tell you,
about if you are deciding to be with someone and to do things
that married people
do.
Right.
That's what he's talking about. Not if you're like single and you're just like on your grind and trying to do what you do. That's completely fine.
Right.
That's up to you. But if you are in a relationship where you know, you are going to be giving up some things.
Right. So Chanel said that they are definitely waiting, but they are still, most are still indulging in the benefits of marriage.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's go with that. The benefits of marriage. Okay.
Yeah.
So when people, most of the time, I think that's a major issue because as Christians, we want to live our best life.
Right.
But also as women, we kind of have to wait until you guys initiate it, or some women feel like they can propose, but some people are old-fashioned and they feel like, hey, you know, I will wait until he proposes. But I'm not sure if he's going to propose if all the benefits are gotten. Okay, it depends on age, the age of the person. Back in my parents' day, if you got pregnant, you would definitely have gotten married. I'm guessing that says. I can't see the C more.
It's cut off a little bit.
But yes, back in the day, it would be. I heard a lot more of it's better to marry than to burn.
Right. You hear it as a punishment or almost an ultimatum where you have to make the choice to do what's right in the eyes of the Lord.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But now people don't see it as a benefit when. You know, looking back now, I see so much favor that happened once we got married. Once you make a commitment, like I think anything that you offer up to God as an offering, any relationship, He has the opportunity to then bless it. It's just like thinking about if I have kids. Well, I do have kids. I'm thinking about if my kids would just run off and go get married and not tell us how I would feel as a parent.
Right.
If they wouldn't even consider how I would feel or whether I would approve of the union or not.
Right.
And sometimes that's what happens when you just go out here and just marry anybody. It's like going out and not even consulting whether this is the mate that God has made for you, or you just went out because you needed to put your fire out.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. And so you want to make sure that you don't get caught up in that. Let's see, it says marriage. Marriage works, especially if you're especially if you're on one accord and you put God first. Yes, especially if you do that. If you put God first in your marriage, it's definitely going to flourish.
Right.
But when we talk about whether or not people are going to get married, based on the better to marry than to burn, which was the previous thought, and now it's kind of like I've heard some people say that you have to test the waters. Like, how are you going to marry somebody and you haven't tested the waters? Well, it's
not a car.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a car.
It's actually the most sacred covenant that you can have outside of giving your life to God, and it's one of those things that it transcends above the experience. There's a spiritual significance. I mean, God was so perfect in how He made man and woman. Is chemically, you're attracted to each other. So when you indulge in those benefits, you end up imprinting. This is what animals do. You imprint. Yes. And you're thinking about that person all day, and it kind of keeps you connected. So it's so much deeper than, just a casual fling. That things happen. And then people get caught up in years of soul ties, and they don't know why they stuck. But it's because you've given the most valuable piece of you to so many people. And so you're torn.
And then you're carrying the spirits with you from the people who you
other encounters.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that it's a smooth balance that you have to find between when they say it's better to marry than to burn, and then
Soul ties are real.
And then
Yep.
the testing the waters. For me personally, when people said that to me, like, you're gonna get married and you haven't tested the waters, I'm like, well, I just don't see the point.
Yeah.
I just never saw the point because if I believe that this is who God has for me anyway, I believe that He's thought through all of that. Like, I
Right.
believe that He thought through what it was we were going to need. I believe that He knows the hairs on our head, so surely He knows everything else. Okay, and so whenever you talk about, well, what if, or what if, or what if, well, you wouldn't know any different if that was the only person who you were with in the first place.
Right.
And so, if we get back to the topic that we were talking about priorities,
Yeah.
you kind of have to make sure that you put your priorities in order there.
Right.
Well, what is my priority? My
Right.
priority number one is that it's in the will of God. And
Right.
if that is the case, in the beginning of your priorities, everything else will line up, and everything else will be what you need.
Right. And that's not always easy.
Right.
You know, we're
At
not
all,
going
it's not.
to present it as if, hey, you're just failing. Like, no, it's hard to get there. Sometimes you're in this waiting cycle because so many things come at you that's not the will
Right.
of God. And sometimes you're like, well, I'm just going to do this. It seems like God don't care. Like, no, I mean, you got to clear some stuff out of your life to
Yeah.
actually get what God has for you. Because just like you wouldn't give a child something that they're not ready for, God is not going to let you just play with somebody's heart.
Right.
You know, certain people just can't connect. Like my wife said, was it last week or maybe 2 weeks ago? You said that, hey, when she was 12 years old, she said, hey, I'm going to marry that guy. Now, what if she would have, because I didn't know that at all until later down the line. But what if she said, you know, right when she said that in her mind jokingly that she was going to pursue me right then. So
Right.
we hooked up at 12 and 15 and both immature minds.
Right.
We were like, you know what? I can't stand her. And we
Exactly.
never
Never
would
come
have came
back
into
together.
the right timing,
Right.
right season where we were mature enough to handle
Right.
what she thought God was saying and eventually what God told me about her. So I had to get to a place where I was mature enough to handle a serious relationship, and which everyone has to do. Everyone has to mature to the place where you can handle loving
Right.
your spouse or loving that person.
Yes. Because a lot of times you have to give up things for that kind of love, and so the priorities there are a lot as well. You got to make sure you are number one. I think for us, the major thing was that you really started seeking God
Right.
before we got married. Like when like we said, God told him in worship that I was his wife because God saw that at that moment he was like really surrendered to God. At that time, we were like really, people would call us like super deep or super spiritual at the time because.
Let me translate for you.
Okay.
We were super young and super broke
Yes.
and super unsupported.
Come on through.
So the only thing we had was God. Like, so, you know.
If you don't do it, it won't be done.
Yeah, God, if you don't come through for us, like, you know.
Yes.
We talked previously about like family support or whatever.
Yeah.
And because of where we come from, we didn't have the support of our families because they felt like we were leaving the family religion or the family beliefs or family customs. So we had to literally depend and pray to God, like, God, you know, you got us out here. You got to keep us up.
Right.
So it wasn't really super deep. We were praying for meals to be on the table.
But that's why I said people would call it super deep.
I mean,
and the reason why I say that is because nowadays, especially, it's a lot of surface Christian relationship, really, because not many people are spending a lot of time with God, but we are using His name in a lot of different arenas. So right now, back then for us, we were at a place where we were like really, like we were always praying, and we were just like it was just so different than what I knew, because when I grew up I didn't really have relationship. I more so had just the rules, and so we had started to get that relationship piece with God. And so once you get to that place where you're gaining a relationship with God, you can start to hear the voice of God, and then He can lead you to who it is that you are supposed to be with, because that relationship with God is constant communication. And so when it says to pray without ceasing, that literally means, you know, you're praying all the time. You're praying about every decision that you make.
Right.
And so.
But, you know, the funny thing is that it's really as simple as Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first
the
kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything that you want is going to be added to you. It's literally that simple. Like when I start wanting stuff, I'm like, you know what? I got to seek the kingdom on this. I got to seek God. Like, what do I want? Like when I started, you said being super deep, that's when everything else started happening. Like like when I was in a moment of worship, I'm seeking God. I'm like, man, and God says, okay, you've been asking, or you want a wife? She's right here.
Right.
You know, and it wasn't when I was expecting. I was seeking God at the point. I wasn't thinking about it.
Wasn't even thinking about it.
And that was my answer right there.
Right.
So I know that Matthew 6:33 literally works.
It does.
Because it happened. So I mean, you seeking God for a career, you seeking God for a building, you want your business or your brand to pop off.
Yeah.
Seek the kingdom.
Yeah.
Seek the kingdom first, and it'll happen for you.
Exactly. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, everybody that's coming in.
Hey, everybody that's coming in. If you're just coming in and you want to know what we're talking about, we're talking about priorities.
Talking about priorities.
Yep. And wherever, in relationships, in your relationship with God, in every area of your life, in your marriage, what have you. So
maybe your children, maybe your spouse. I think a lot of things tend to happen when when priorities are mixed up.
Right.
In whatever relationship it is. One thing we were taught growing up, it was the 10 Commandments, and the first commandment was, thou shalt not have no other God before thee. So when you put other things in the place of God or in the time space of God, even your job, it comes up in the chopping block.
Right, it does.
Because you're literally saying, God, you're not number one.
Wow.
Or I love you, but I don't love you as much as I love this.
Right.
And sometimes you got to be careful even how you treat your job, because if your job offer you time and a half, and you've dedicated time to go worship, or you dedicated time to read and study your word, you dedicated time for study, and you begin to sell that time, then that becomes a God. Yeah, it becomes your number one.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that, hey, I started off with God number one, but why does it feel like things are not happening for me? Sometimes the priorities have shifted.
Right. And it's not that you intentionally
No, it's not intentional.
Do it. It's just something that happens over time. Okay. She says, going through hard times together with God will force you, yes, to lean and depend on God.
Right.
Exactly.
I know that's our testimony.
Yes, it is. And and God is a jealous God. Yes, he is.
Yep.
That is definitely true. Whenever you, I think I always take and I look at church here in America versus church in other countries. So like if you go to Africa and you see like how they address God or how they walk the amount of time it takes to get to wherever the meeting is, and how they just respond differently, and even to prayer. It's because they have a different need than we do. Like for us, we can just go to the store and get some medicine and fix the problem. Like that's just how we were taught. And it's available, and it's easier to get here than there. And so for them, they're just like, and this is not everybody in Africa, because it's huge. Africa's a huge continent, so let's get rid of that stigma, because everybody is not sitting outside in the dirt. That's not at all. But I'm just saying the zeal that people have in other countries, and not even just Africa, is that they depend more on God for things.
Right.
And so for us, with our priorities, if we start to depend on God for more things, then we will be able to give him credit for more things.
Right.
So for us, it's like, I can only speak for myself. For me, I don't like to take medicines or things like that, and so I do more of the holistic approach and do what like I use herbs and what have you. But and I also pray about it. Like I pray about every situation. Like if my kids are sick, I'm praying, and so that's my priority, to make sure that God is at the beginning of it and not just, oh, let me call the doctor. Let me call the doctor, all right, amen. Let's go ahead and call the doctor, okay?
The doctor.
And so my priorities in that aspect would be to place God there. And so, you have that as your option. What did we say?
Other religions as well.
Yes, other religions as well. They do. They do tend to pray more as well. If you look at other religions, they pray 3 and 4 times a day intentionally at specific times, and they give their time more diligently to what they believe.
Right.
And so for us, we say our grace, and
Right.
we,
I
we
think
don't always
basically,
give.
I think
that
we're
time.
just not as loyal as we should be.
And that's
it's-
across the board, not
yeah,
just prayer.
yeah, that's across the board. We're not loyal to what we believe. Some people, they go hard for what they believe, and they try to gain approval based on the works that they do. But
Right.
when you love something, or you can say you love God, you do it. You tend to prove it by your actions.
Right.
And I think sometimes we've gotten off focus. Now, we weren't intending to say so much about God,
Right,
in the
religion.
priorities, but when we look at it, if
That's
it's if your
priority.
if your priority starts in the right place,
Right.
then everything else is going to kind of fall in line. Your family life is going to be okay. Sometimes we make up so much because we want God to forgive us.
Right.
So we know that this relationship is not just horizontal, but it's vertical too. Like
Right.
this is an offering that we're giving before God. So we want that to bloom and blossom and to be blessed.
Right.
Right.
And so, could you guys tell us some scenarios where, or how you think that we can change our priorities, or how we can recognize the things that have taken priority? Because sometimes we don't even realize things that have now taken priority. Because sometimes we're like, I cannot believe everything that's happening around me. Like, this is falling apart.
Right,
Like my
right.
tires and fell off my car,
Right.
and my and that's not to say that you're always doing something wrong, because
Right.
it rains on the just and the unjust.
Right.
But sometimes things happen because we place them, like he said, in the place of God,
Right.
and instead of giving God that time, we give it to something else. So sometimes we can recognize things like that and say, okay, well, why is all of this stuff happening
Yeah.
around me?
And you know what? Being a Christian, as long as I've been a Christian, I kind of know when something was my fault. As far as misfortune, I can kind of pinpoint to a bad decision that I've made. I've had, like flat tires, or I was supposed to be more benevolent to someone or
Right.
some entity,
Right.
and I end up having to spend the resources on something that was unexpected
Right.
when I could have given it to someone that was in need.
Right.
So you kind of I felt, and this you probably have this same testimony where you kind of feel like, man, I should have, I could have responded to the leading, because most of us, we're walking around and especially believers, we're walking around and we're being nudged by Holy Spirit.
Right.
Hey, do this, or go this route, call this person,
Yes.
give them $20 or pay for their groceries.
Right.
And we just like, and we never address the nudging.
Exactly.
And
Because in that moment, you can think of anything that you could do with your money.
that
right?
you could do with it.
So you hear it say, hey, get a certain amount of money or pay for their groceries. And you're like, I could get some pants with that. Like,
right. I mean,
or,
you don't think
and it
about
could be, it just automatically happens sometimes. You just kind of ignore it, by mistake. Or you just ignore it or press override. And so you just kind of have to start trying to recognize those things that may have taken priority, and that you may not be hearing
right
what you should have done.
or respond in the way that you're supposed to respond.
Right.
So it's not all the time, but I will say that sometimes we allow misfortune by missing ups that we could have responded to, and that again goes to priority. So
Yes. And
So,
go ahead.
I'll open the floor up for a few questions. We're about to leave you for tonight.
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful. I know just even thinking about it helped me to realize, hey, it was a God thing.
Right.
The whole priority, our conversation, and sometimes things happen, like having kids. knowing that you have to put on your mom hat more frequently.
Right.
You know, look for the subtle hint that, hey, this is neglected. Now you.
She said the other broadcast was interrupted.
Oh, really?
Had to switch to the other one.
Oh, man. Hey, what's going on? I see people coming on. See, I didn't even know. It's just over here, it's just going.
And it doesn't
Tell us nothing. Thank you for letting me know, Chanel.
So yeah, so we want to go ahead and close out and make sure that we give you guys all the information to make sure that you can see us on our next live. If you have not already, you can click the follow button so that you can hear us next time. And also, if you are not our friends and you're just watching the review, you can definitely
friend us,
because we, cool to say, yeah.
So next week we're gonna have our Christmas special. It's gonna be Christmas Eve. So
sometimes God will allow people to friends to walk away, lose a job, a death of a loved one. That's true. Yep, he will. And he will allow certain things to happen. And it's not, like I said, it's not always because you're doing something wrong. Some things just happen. If it's something that you can tie to something, because like say it's somebody you like really love and you really like kind of worship around that they walk on.
Yeah.
And then sometimes God removes those people in order to get to you, and that happens. So
yeah, and I think a lot of times we God as if he's the all powerful and he needs. I mean, he is all powerful, but some of the things that happen in our lives are because of our choices.
Right.
Because we have free will.
Right.
We have free will. You have the choice to live 20 extra years if you want by not eating bacon grease every day.
Right.
You know, so when you go to the doctor and they say, hey, you should change your diet a little bit, or you're 50 pounds overweight, that is your opportunity to make the adjustment.
Right.
To change the course of your life. So,
and it doesn't always have to come from the doctor either. We know when we
we know. Yeah.
You can't breathe when you walk up the steps.
Right.
Like you can't
wake up, your feet hurting, your back hurting. Like your
I mean,
body is telling you, hey,
yes.
it's time for a change.
Right.
It's time for a different.
And since we are talking about it just really fits in.
Right.
We have got to make our bodies our priorities as
right.
well.
Your body's a temple.
And that's not just for us to look good, it's for us to function well. And so I admit, I love cookies. I love cakes and pies.
Yeah, we all do.
I really like sweets, but and I allow them to take over my life for so
long.
long.
They come in.
You're rushing when, and they will grab a hold of your health and strangle you to death, literally. Yeah. And so I've been making a couple different lives to try and counteract that, because I want to be here for a long time for my kids, and if that is my priority, then I have to now address my body and how I use it and how I take care of it. Because we always talk about your body is a temple of God. You should not get tattoos. Okay. Well, your body is a temple of God, and you should stop eating ho-hos. Okay, or you stop eating so much of the bad things that are causing you to be ill. Right. And so, we just can see what other people do, and how they should change. And a lot of times we don't take that mirror and turn it the other way and say, I've got it to control of my life. I got to meet priority. And so even in a marriage, like I can get caught up in making sure his stomach is full or making sure my kid, but then forget about myself and how I take care of me. Yeah, tell the truth.
Tell about them sweets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sweets will take it.
And it's funny because this is the time of year where you kind of let stuff slide. I mean, ever since Thanksgiving, we've been letting stuff slide.
I'm gonna be honest.
It's Christmas, so man, sweets and sweets.
Making more and more things like that. It's always a way to make pies and cakes, even if you change the style. So, like, if I became vegan, the first thing I decided to learn how to remake was like desserts. Brownies, cookies, and it was just so funny to me that that's what I chose to do.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I have to click that.
No. I will. We get some comments.
Yes.
Don't laugh, Devaney. Hello, Keita. It's okay.
Yes, you can figure out how to make certain things regardless of your diet. But I had to pull myself in and just say, you need to go get you some time and stop yourself.
Yes. So she's been starving us around here, detoxing.
I'm like, wow, the fast coming.
Exactly.
And then you got set, right? Because then we're like, the New Year's coming, we're gonna start these resolutions, and those resolutions are not gonna carry into the middle of the year. By the June comes, gain all the weight back that eating. I bind that right now in the name of Jesus. We will not gain the weight we have lost prior to now. We will do the work to make sure that prayer comes to pass. Right. Okay, I'm not just praying and then we're gonna go eat all the cake as we want, but we're gonna speak it into existence and then we're going to do the work. Okay, so we're gonna start some exercise stuff, ladies.
Come on,
we're gonna just keeping it going, Devaney. Let's get it going. But so while we're talking about priorities, we cannot forget about making ourselves
priority.
Yep.
One of the major things that I experienced over the year is that time of fasting, where I didn't have all of the sweets or whatever, and there was such a clarity, a clearness, and I was so much more alert and aware of what was going on around me.
Right.
And people may say it's deep or something different about you, but sometimes when you are serious about what you want, you just go hard after it.
Right.
And when you get to that point of no return, then people will see the results. And I think a lot of people, they are here chasing their dreams, chasing their goals, and they go hard after it. Like, really, they're willing to do whatever it takes, stay up long hours, make friends and network, and they don't care who it is, they don't care how they have to get it done, hook or crook. There's a lot of different things that go on, and when they make that decision, you normally reach that goal. You see,
I'm saying, as much as I prayed for supernatural loss,
it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, I'm glad you realize that it's not happening.
Supernatural weight loss is not gonna happen. Just like supernatural money is not coming if you're not doing.
Now, God can do miracles, but
but if you're not doing what you do, if you're not in the place where you need to be to get it, then it's still not coming.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's right, sis. Whenever we pray for, we like, Lord, if you could just bind these calories and these cookies, He's not gonna do that. He's not. Yeah. That's not how our bodies operate.
Right.
And so I realized, like you said, when you're eating a different diet and then you go back to something else, you realize that, hey, your body gives you cues. And so, like, growing up, I've always had issues with migraines. And so once I cut a bunch of stuff out of my diet, I realized I just didn't have migraines. So it wasn't that I had to keep eating ibuprofen every day when I got a migraine, because that's what we do. If we get migraines, you're like, I'm going to go this ibuprofen and it'll be fine. I'll get there eventually. But if you figure it out, take something out. So like, what did I eat? Go back through your diet and see, what did I eat today that maybe has caused this headache. And for me, if you do deal with headaches, it was most of the time it was like chocolate that causes headaches. And this is clearly a sign, but you want to just kind of address those things because it's priority. If you make your health priority, you have to start watching the things that you eat in order to see what's wrong.
Me in my 20s, I realized that pork gave me headaches, so I could have like pork chops, anything that's kind of high in sodium, and
that happens for a lot of us. That's why a lot of us have high blood pressure, and it comes from the meat that we eat, and so I say, and people take different routes. People go with keto, some people go vegan, and just like we talked about before, we're not going to make fun of anybody either way, because the Bible says if a man regardeth a day or he eats meat and you don't, then that's none of your business.
Like he's a guy at God's table.
Right. And so figure out which thing works for you. Okay. This is so true. Headaches, stomach aches, bloating, etc. Instead of not eating the food.
Right.
Yes. Exactly. I can't see the end of it because once it starts to say see more, I
Right.
can't see it. But yes,
yeah.
headaches and things like that come from the different things that we
Right.
eat. And if you want to drink a lot more water, flush your system out, especially if you do eat something that you know flush that system out. Like try to drink the water and flush it out and kind of restart. But just a little snippet. Eventually, I'm gonna get back to Misha's Kitchen and we'll talk about all those.
Yeah, she's working on stuff for the new year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually do a up close and personal in the new year. I'm not gonna.
Yep.
So we actually have a live audience, and
Yes.
let's talk about stuff that is really important. Relationship stuff is important, but hey, you want to be whole
as a person.
Yeah.
When
you go into that relationship, you don't want to be sleeping your life away while your spouse is waiting to live life with you. So I really want you to approach it as, hey, I want to be who God wants me to be. And, I want to live abundantly. And it doesn't necessarily always mean having a lot of money, but just having life, living your best life. Because you can live in and out of hospitals every week.
She said, is keto a major diet switch?
Talk to a professional.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it can definitely be, and I've some research on both. If you do keto, yes, it can be a switch, but majority of the food you're already eating, but you kind of cut out carbs and things like that. So we can talk later. Yeah. Yes, it is a bit of a different lifestyle. Yes, a lot of carbs and sugars. Yes, yeah. I love carbs and sugars. And most of us do. Like our body, you know the Bible talks about your flesh. Like your flesh loves cookies and sugar.
Right.
And
sugar
carbs.
Is addictive.
That's what I'm. Your flesh, your brain, all your signals go off whenever it gets carbs and things like that. So yes, we do like that kind of stuff. But it's always a time where when we're flushed out, it seems like these are against us. Like once you start drinking a lot more water and you start detoxing, you start getting headaches a little bit.
Caffeine, yeah.
And caffeine, yes. And you start to get headaches a little bit, and your body just makes like a major turnaround, and it's kind of like, what is happening? But that should be flushing all those toxins out that you've been putting in for so long. And so yes, we definitely want to start doing that. Start flushing your system out and start eating more vegetables, more holistic vegetables. But we can talk about that again with Misha's Kitchen. But if you did not see on my page that I am doing like elderberry syrup, I want to let you guys know that. I'm doing an elderberry syrup, which is a natural approach to cough syrup. And it also is really good for digestion and things like that. So you definitely, give me a call. Let me know. We can work it out. And also, coming up in the new year, like you said, with Misha's Kitchen, I'm going to be doing a cookbook. And I'm also doing some seasonings that I think you guys will love. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, she's making it easy for y'all.
Yes. That way you can take out the guesswork. What she say? Oh, but I love sugar. I gotta stop listening. Okay, exactly. You gotta stop listening to your flesh. But you already know.
Yeah,
Raj,
you know.
already know.
You know that.
But anyway, thank you guys so much for coming and chatting with us today.
My Aunt Mary, good to see you.
And your mom is over here.
They told me that my screen froze, so I just reset it. Reset it. Yeah. Reset it.
Yes.
So go ahead. I was just thinking, everybody that came on, I think priorities are very, very large topic.
Very broad.
We thought we were going to talk about relationship, but it ended up being about our bodies and really setting the record straight with God.
Right.
If you have a lot of different things going on in your life that you've placed in your number one spot, God is a jealous God.
Right.
And eventually you're going to see everything else begin to cave in as a result of him not being put in his place.
Right.
And you can't look at it as if God doesn't see
Right.
what's happening, or he's far away, or you're going to sneak one past him. Like, no, every decision that you make, when nobody else is watching, you know,
Right.
you define integrity as is what you do when nobody else is watching. But God sees that.
Yes, and I think about it all the time because, like, being vegan, sometimes you can, and I really don't want to eat meat for the most part, right? But sometimes, like if I'm at a party or something and they have meat or whatever, and it smells good, and you're thinking like, man, if I just eat a little bit, nobody will know that I ate it. You know, like my husband won't know, but
No
he wouldn't
judgment,
care.
yeah,
Like
no
he wouldn't
judgment
care
zone
for
here.
real. But you run through those thoughts in your mind, like, you know, nobody will know, and so that could go like through a lot of different, you know, scenarios.
Right.
But you have to realize that God is always watching, and your body is just always watching. It's always there with you, and whatever you do, it's going to speak out. It's it's going to tell on you, and eventually. So.
Right. I mean, your sacrifice is gonna pay off.
Yeah.
You know, so whatever you do, do it wholeheartedly. That's one of my favorite scriptures in Colossians. Look, do whatever it is you decide to do.
Yep.
Whether you're working with somebody, you start your own business, do it with all your heart, and that's where you're gonna find success. If you have to do everything, I don't care how talented you are, you're not gonna get very far with your talent itself.
Right.
It takes, you know, sacrifice and dedication. It takes focus, and it takes priorities.
Right. It does.
So that's gonna be our wrap up for tonight.
Yeah. And we appreciate you guys
as we
coming
go towards
and watching.
the new year, just make sure that your priorities are set straight.
Amen. So,
She tapping me. She's like, "Hey, long-winded preacher."
Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight and clicking on and watching us. We really appreciate you. We can't do it without you. And we hope that you guys come back next week. And we will see you
We have
soon.
our Christmas special on Christmas Eve.
Yep, Christmas special, Christmas Eve.
We're gonna Carol.
Gonna carol.
Carol might have an ugly sweater or two on. Maybe.
Yep, but we love you guys. Thanks again so much for watching, and we will see you guys soon.
All right. Bye.
Love ya.
Make sure you share.
Yes, make sure you share.
Make sure you share.
Make sure you share.
Like
Make
and
sure you
share. Like and share.
Like and share.
All right. Hey, Tanika, good to see you.